Today we're going to be ranking every chapter in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. Now that the first arc seems to be completed and we're well over a year into the manga so far, I thought it was only right to do a proper tier list on every chapter in the Timeskip. So down here are our first 15 chapters, and here are the tiers. S tier is going to be for like peak chapters, my absolute favorites. A tier is going to be really good chapters. B tier is going to be good chapters. C tier is going to be kind of like meh, mid chapters. And then D is just where we put the garbage. A good example of a D tier chapter would be like chapter 73 in part 1 of the manga. Make sure to smash the like button if you've been enjoying 2 Blue Vortex, and without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 1. This is the beginning of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. I'm gonna put this in A tier. I don't think it was the absolute best chapter, but it was a really good opening to the manga. It did a really good job of bringing us back up to speed after like 3 years of a time gap, kind of reintroduced all the characters again and showed what they've been up to. Pretty much all the new Timeskip designs were sick as hell, and most importantly, it made sure to waste no time getting to the action. We could have had a slow start to this manga, and that just wouldn't set a good precedent in my opinion. Within the first chapter, we get Code attacking the village, some cool fights against the Grime, panic ensuing, Boruto coming to the rescue, and his like big reveal at the end of the chapter. Like, it did a really good job hammering home what this manga is going to be about. Honestly, this chapter had a lot to do. It needed to kind of re-grab the audience it left. It needed to try to introduce new fans, what the story is going to be all about. You know, people have been anticipating the Timeskip for pretty much a decade at this point, if not longer, and there's a lot of hype for this chapter, so I think it delivered. I think some people had way too high expectations for this first chapter. We're not going to get like 20 gazillion fights and 20 insane plot twists and all this stuff. Like, it's just one singular chapter. With what it set out to do, I think it accomplished very well, and I'm going to put it firmly into the A tier. Next, we have chapter 2, and following chapter 1, I originally thought this was a B tier chapter, and it may stay here, but let me try to explain why. So chapter 2 was a slower chapter. Following chapter 1, I think it would have been important to really get the action going, and while there was a lot of action in chapter 2, we got a cool moment with Sarada Chidoring some Grime and Inoshikacho and Kawaki fighting some off. It didn't feel as exciting as chapter 3 and 4. That being said, I think Boruto fighting the Grime before, you know, his eventual fight against Code was super cool. We got some really cool panels of him just like doing pure kenjutsu moves, which we honestly don't see a lot from him. So especially in part 1, which I really liked. Like, this chapter has some awesome panels, especially that panel at the end of him, you know, activating Uzuhiko. This was a cool chapter, but a lot of it was just a yap session. Like Boruto said probably like 10 different times, Code, don't do this, I'm gonna kill you. Code proceeds to continue attacking the village, and Boruto's like, no, Code, I'm gonna kill you, I swear. Code continues again. Boruto's like, no, seriously, Code, I'm gonna kill you, I'm capable of killing you. And it was just like a back and forth yap session. Boruto came across as pretty cool, but it was also wasting a lot of time. Like, we could have gotten that point across really quickly and, you know, continued on with the action. So for that, I'm gonna put this in B tier. I don't think it's a bad chapter at all. It was a good chapter, but the pacing was a little slow. Next, we have chapter 3, and this is S tier. This is one of my favorite chapters. This is Boruto versus Code, the first like proper full fight. And while I say proper full fight, this was by no means a fight. This was entirely one-sided. I don't think Code landed a single hit on Boruto. Every attack he sent his way, Boruto either dodged or blocked. Uzuhiko Rasengan basically rendered Code completely useless the entire fight, and it was a beatdown. This was just a fun chapter to read. There were some really good panels in here. The art was a clear improvement from the previous 2 chapters. All in all, this was a really good fight. Super cool to see Boruto just taking Code to Pound Town, honestly. I think towards the end, we also got Boruto and Kawaki meeting for the first time, Boruto seeing Himawari for the first time, and then Code escaping even, and then we got like a reveal of the Ten Tails, as well as a pretty big, huge hint that Kashin Koji was still alive. This is a peak chapter. This chapter was so cool. So much stuff happened in this chapter. And would you believe it or not, they followed chapter 3 up with another peak chapter. Chapter 4 might be my favorite chapter in all of Two Blue Vortex. We're gonna find out as I go through these and, you know, try to remember everything that happened, but all I can say is I love Chapter 4. The ending, like the final panel in Chapter 4, is my favorite panel in Two Blue Vortex so far. That shit just goes so unbelievably hard. But yeah, this chapter was a banger. I'm trying to think. So much happened in this chapter. We got Boruto's flying Raijin reveal. We got the Kashin Koji reveal. We got the Sasuke tree reveal. We got introduced to all the Shinju. We got a bunch of fights between, you know, Boruto and the bug Shinju. I'm forgetting his name. Boruto versus Hidari. Boruto versus Matsuri. Jura revealing himself. This chapter was just full of action, full of hype, full of craziness. I loved every bit of it, and I'm actually going to put it above Chapter 3. I preferred the fight in Chapter 3 more than the fights in Chapter 4, but just the story as a whole and the implications of this chapter are awesome, and I really can't wait to see this chapter animated. There's so much condensed here. Multiple fights alone, like Boruto versus the Bug Claw Grime, could easily get extended into like a 5-minute fight. I think there was also stuff going on in the background as well, like Kawaki confronting Sarada, and stuff happening with Shikamaru maybe. I don't fully remember, but one thing is for sure, this is an S tier chapter. All right, next we have Chapter 5, and this followed up all the action and crazy hype with a more mellow chapter. No fights happened this chapter, but it properly introduced the Shinju, established their targets. I think it revealed their identities, and then it had, it had the Boruto and Sasuke flashback showing how Sasuke got attacked by Code and how Boruto trained with him, which was super cool. And then the ending was just super wholesome for all the Boruto and Sarada romance fans. All in all, this chapter was probably better than Chapter 1. I'm not going to put it in S tier because this was a slower, you know, more relaxed chapter. It wasn't like absolute peak, but it was pretty damn good for an A tier chapter. Yeah, there was a lot going on in this chapter and I really liked it. All right, Chapter 6. This was, let's see, what all happened in Chapter 6? Obviously, Shikamaru's on the cover. I think this had a lot to do with Shikamaru and the Elders. Actually, you know what? Let me refresh my memory real quick and pull this chapter up. Okay, I'm remembering now. So it's, you know, the introduction is just Shikamaru interacting with the Elders and then Kawaki yapping with Ada. That was okay, didn't really care that much, but the second half of the chapter is where it picks up a lot. This is where Mitsuki just one-shots Kawaki with a snake and poisons him, completely rendering him unconscious, and goes after Boruto by himself. And this is the first time Shikamaru comes in contact with Boruto and kind of figures out, I think, the truth about omnipotence and is like establishing his role as Boruto's supporter and really establishing Boruto's role as the Shadow Hokage. So a lot of cool implications here and a lot of cool developments. And then of course at the end we get the first half of the Boruto versus Mitsuki fight, which is fire. We reveal that Boruto can fly. We reveal that Boruto's a god at using flying Raijin and purple lightning, and Mitsuki gets to flex his power. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think this chapter might actually be A tier. But the truth is, all of that is only the second half of the chapter, and the first half is pretty boring. So I'm gonna have to leave this chapter in B tier just because the first 20 pages, nothing really happens whatsoever, but the second half is fire. Yeah, I think B tier is fair. All right, next chapter is Chapter 7, and I'm gonna throw this in, I think this is an S tier chapter, Boruto versus Mitsuki. I'm just slightly disappointed that Mitsuki didn't really get any new power. Going into this chapter, I think the hype was around what's Mitsuki's new power, you know, what did Mitsuki gain during the time skip? How strong is he? And really all we got were snake clones, which I feel like he already could do pre-time skip, but I'm not remembering. But yeah, there wasn't any real like major reveal for Mitsuki's character or power up or anything. He basically had the exact same arsenal and abilities. And you know, maybe that's my fault for coming into this chapter with too high of an expectation, but truly this Boruto versus Mitsuki fight has been hyped since long ago, years ago. And when you put that aside, this chapter was really good. I mean, the fight was awesome. This is still one of the best fights in the manga, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can agree. But my favorite part of this chapter wasn't actually the fight. It was Boruto and Mitsuki's conversation afterwards. Boruto basically convinces Mitsuki that he's his son and Kawaki isn't shit, and tells Shikamaru and Ino, who are listening in, that Naruto's still alive and safe. Yeah, I just really loved that ending. It was very heartwarming and put a lot of things into perspective, and really was a good showcase of how far Boruto's come and how bad his current predicament is, where basically his best friend is completely blood bloodlusted, trying to kill him with all of his might. I'm thinking if they put this in the anime with some depressing ass music, I'm thinking like sadness and sorrow, this probably will hit a lot harder, but even in manga form, I got the feels from this one. Fight was still really cool, I just had too high of expectations, and that's kind of ingrained in my mind. Yeah, we got a cool, lightning versus lightning clash. Boruto just slicing through Mitsuki's snake clones, flexing his flying Raijin, dodging the snakes and slicing through them. Really, Mitsuki had no chance in this fight. As much as I thought maybe Mitsuki would have landed a singular hit, it makes sense that he didn't manage to do anything. Boruto's just that strong. Okay, Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Let's see. I think this was the aftermath of the Mitsuki and Boruto fight. So we got the conversation with Ada and Mitsuki, which was actually super wholesome and really interesting to read how, I guess, two characters that I didn't picture getting along in my mind actually are in pretty similar circumstances. And after that, we got Jura and Hidari invading the village, which started basically the first little mini arc that preceded the next 5 chapters after this. Jura absolutely destroyed the Jonin who confronted him in the village, really flexing his power. Then him and Hidari just wandered through the village looking in bookshops and just doing random shenanigans until eventually they were confronted by Kawaki, where Kawaki then got his ass handed to him. Granted, he did, I think, manage to land like maybe a hit on Hidari, but Jura went to work on that man. And of course, the chapter ended off with them confronting Team 10 in search of Naruto and tracking the Nine Tails chakra and finding Himawari instead, which, that got the gears spinning. Holy shit, is Himawari the Nine Tails? Obviously now we know she is, but back then, that was probably the best cliffhanger of all the chapters so far. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I think A tier is where it belongs. Is it better than Chapter 1? Might be. I mean, this was a cool chapter, but I'm gonna put it back here. Yeah, I think Chapter 1 probably just has better highlights, but it's not too far behind. This was a really good chapter. Chapter 9. Honestly forgetting what happened in Chapter 9. Let me pull it up on my other monitor. Okay, so Chapter 9 is Inoshikacho fighting Jura. I thought this was a little underwhelming and kind of odd that Jura was going so easy on a bunch of Genin, and the fact that they actually were able to escape and outmaneuver him while he just kind of stood there with his hands in his pocket. That perturbed me a little bit, but of course we got the Boruto versus Kawaki fight, which was pretty awesome. Boruto just dodged attack after attack from Kawaki's Kokugan rods and just punched him in his gut and sent him flying. And then we get the reveal that Kawaki's resonance can control Boruto's karma, and there's something going on here where Boruto immediately needed to run because we didn't know at that time, but the karma had some sort of negative effect on him. We know now that is because Momoshiki takes over when his karma is fully activated, just without warning. So yeah, he had to get the hell out of there. The rest of that chapter was really just, I guess Inoshikacho just running away. Oh yeah, this is Jura flexing his eye power where he just sends a nuke across the Hidden Leaf Village and Chocho manages to frickin' smack him out of the way, which is so absurd to me. I don't know how on earth that happened. And then we get the Kurama reveal at the end, which really seals the deal here. If the Kurama reveal wouldn't happen in this chapter, I think this is honestly like a C tier chapter, and I may still keep it here. Let me think. I didn't really care about Inoshikacho versus Jura. Boruto versus Kawaki was cool, and of course the Kurama reveal was awesome, but that's like 2 pages out of the chapter. I don't know if it's worth putting it up to B tier. I'm gonna leave it in C tier. I don't know if anything else is really gonna go down in C or D, and I don't want to leave these tiers completely empty, so, might as well make use of them. That's the reason why it's here. It's not that I hate Kurama, or I hate Jura, or I hate Himawari. It's hard to say. It wasn't uneventful, but it felt uneventful. And that's just me. A lot of talking points out of it, but yeah, let's continue. Chapter 10. Not remembering much from this one either, so I'm gonna say it probably was also uneventful, but let me pull it up and skim through it real quickly. So, Kawaki chased after Boruto, Hidari pulled up on Sarada. Okay, I'm remembering this now. This was pretty cool. So Konohamaru, Sarada, and Hidari kind of faced off. Yeah, and Sarada just dodged his attack and absolutely destroyed Hidari. That was a cool sequence. That's gonna get some bonus points for sure. A little mini fight between Sarada and Hidari. Let's see. The rest of the chapter is really just Himawari talking with Kurama, and they're just flying away trying to escape. Oh yes, and then Jura catches up to them, breaks Himawari's leg. Inojin runs after Himawari and just gets impaled. That's right. I totally forgot about that. Okay, so the ending was cool with Himawari's Ninetales form reveal. But for the most part, again, I don't think I cared about this chapter all that much. It was cool, but it wasn't my favorite. So I'm going to put it in C tier. None of these chapters are garbage by any means, but these two are probably kind of like meh. I don't really have much to say here. I think a lot of time was just wasted with, Himawari talking with Kurama. We needed to understand why Kurama was still alive, but there's a lot of panels there. A lot of panels of Jura just kind of staring at them and chasing them. Oh, I take that back. I'm totally forgetting the Sarada versus Hidari fight. That was cool, but it was also only 2 pages. Yeah, that was cool. Damn it, do I move it up? Sarada just fighting her dad is so cool. Oh, I can't put it above chapter 10, can I? These 2 chapters are certainly probably my least favorite. I don't know. I think these are interchangeable. Either one could be the worst. We'll leave it at that. All right, it's time for chapter 11. I'm thinking this is more of the Hidari versus Sarada fight. Oh, this is the Himawari fight. Yeah, this chapter's fire. This is an A tier chapter. Himawari obviously reveals her Ninetales power and goes head to head against Jura, kind of coming off as maybe having the upper hand, or at least being on par with him in the beginning, with a couple, 1-2 combos on him, sending him flying, and then sending her own Biju Bomb at him. But after that, she just gets absolutely wrecked. Meanwhile, Sarada is attempting to fight Hidari with Konohamaru. Konohamaru kind of flexed a new Rasengan variation, which was pretty cool. And there were some crazy moments with Hidari, like attacking them from behind using his claw marks. Hidari's use of claw marks was actually really cool. He's, I think, the first Shinju I've seen truly flex how powerful the claw marks are. No one else really utilizes them as much as he does. Hidari's use of the claw marks is very clever, and I really liked seeing that. And then, of course, the end of this chapter was so fire. Best entrance Boruto had, probably even better than chapter 1 with the stomp on Code's head. Him just flying in, saving Himawari at the last second, then teleporting to Hidari's location to save Sarada again at the last second. Total clutch play. Yeah. Chapter 11's A tier. It's better than chapter 8. Is it better than chapter 5? Why do I have 5 so high? I guess just the flashback was cool, learning about the Shinju's targets and Boruto meeting Sarada. But man, do I put this above 1? No, it's not above 1. Yeah, these are all in very close contention here. I think that's good for now. All right, chapter 12, and I'm gonna pull this up on my other monitor, but I'm pretty sure I remember everything that happened in this chapter. This is an S tier chapter. This is the full Boruto and Sarada versus Hidari fight. This probably is even better than chapter 3, and it might as well. Is this the best chapter in the manga? This is tough. Is 12 the best chapter? Let me skim through this chapter again and try to remind myself. Dude's doing front flips while he slices through the claw grime. Sarada's just kicking the shit out of them. Boruto teleports. Freaking Rasengan's Hidari's back. Hidari heals, comes back again. Konohamaru flexes his Rasen barrier again. Sarada gets attacked a second time, but this time she's ready. She Chidoris him and then does a front flip and flicks him up over Boruto's head while he's charging Rasengan Uzuhiko. This is the best combo in the manga so far. Yeah, so cool. Obviously, Boruto can't leave the ground, which is a super cool nerf to his ability. Makes it more grounded. I actually really like the introduction, because prior to this, it seemed like Uzuhiko had no weakness and no downside, but now we know. Obviously, he needs to absorb the planet's chakra. So to charge up Uzuhiko, he needs to keep his feet planted on the ground, which is actually a huge nerf. Yeah, it's almost kind of like Sage Mode in a way, where Naruto needs to sit absolutely still to charge up Sage Mode. And then the panels of him just obliterating Hidari were so cool. Kawaki then swoops in and steals his kill with some pretty cool panels of him just blasting him like a Mortal Kombat finishing move. Then we get the reveal of the Thorn Soul, which is a super cool new revelation to the story. And then at the very end, Jura flexes his sniper ability. He blasts a hole through Boruto's chest, then blasts a hole through Sarada's arm, grabs Hidari's basically reboot card, and just holds it up in one hand while he's like, you know what, Boruto, I've decided you need to die. That was such a fire ending to a fire chapter. After reviewing it, it might go above chapter 4. No, it can't. No, chapter 4 is just too peak. But 12 is in second place right now. Yeah, I think I'm putting this as my favorite fight so far in the manga. And I hope we see more from Hidari. He got kind of embarrassed in this fight. Didn't really put up much of a fight, to be honest. Boruto and Sarada were just too good for him. But that man is the clone of Sasuke after all, so I'm eagerly awaiting when he gets his first dub. Following chapter 12, we had the Prescience chapter. This is S tier, better than 7 for sure. Is it better than chapter 3? I really gotta think about this. Kind of biased because I really like the concept of prescience and how there's different timelines that we can reach, and Koji basically is helping Boruto from the shadows achieve different timelines, and we can see our future. All that story implication is so cool to me. That being said, it wasn't really action-packed at all. It was just lore about Kashin Koji and, the Ishiki flashback and how prescience works and how, their futures are progressing, how they're in the worst possible future, all of that. So really the question here is, what do I like more, a awesome fight or awesome plot and story development? Ooh, this is a tough one. I think I just liked 3 ever so slightly more, but 13 is a fantastic chapter. Finally, we're down to the final 2. Next up is chapter 14. This is Boruto in custody. I think I rated this chapter 6.5 if I recall from my chapter review. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Wasn't a bad chapter, a lot of yapping, which is not bad. I shouldn't say that in a bad way. Boruto was so cool this chapter. This was the coldest we've ever seen him. This was the most attitude we've ever seen him with. These were some of the coolest panels we've ever seen of him. We finally got the reveal that, Shikamaru was struggling with omnipotence all along, but trusted his gut because he's got 200 IQ. Mitsuki truly did join his side and actually was Boruto's ally since chapter 7, which propels chapter 7 even further now that we know the results of that 7 chapters later, that Mitsuki did actually help Boruto escape. Now that wouldn't have happened without Shikamaru's help, so Shikamaru is the GOAT here. I think I said it before chapter 14 released. If Shikamaru wasn't on Boruto's side, there was not a chance in hell that man was escaping. So Shikamaru basically continued the story at this point. Because if Boruto's in handcuffs and he is in, Konoha's custody, the only way he's getting out is if the village realizes how dire the situation is with the Shinju and just release him to let them fight. And what else happened? Is there anything else that happened in this chapter? I think he just escaped at the end. Oh, we got the Ryu reveal, I think. Shinki reveal this chapter. So I'm gonna put this in B tier. I think it was better than chapter 6. Like I said, chapter 6 was only good in the second half with the Mitsuki fight. Otherwise, it was kind of like, what the fuck is going on? Chapter 14 is middle of the road, B tier, good chapter. And finally, we got chapter 15. Where do I rank chapter 15? I forget how I worded it. It's a slow chapter that still felt condensed with a lot of stuff going on. We have the Gaara versus Matsuri fight. We have Shinki getting bitten and trying to successfully sealing Gaara. Then we get Code getting embarrassed by Jura and them forming, I wouldn't really call it a team up, but more like some sort of allegiance. Ryu obviously got revealed. Jura flexed his aura like 10 times this chapter. And then Boruto and Kawaki teamed up, which was probably the highlight of the chapter for me. I think Code getting his arm chopped off and getting absolutely embarrassed put a smile on my face for sure, but Boruto and Kawaki teaming up just has far more story implications that I'm excited for. I'm gonna put this above chapter 6 and above chapter 14 and above chapter 2. No, chapter 2 might be better. Chapter 2, I really liked Boruto versus the Claw Grime. This is hard to rank. Yeah, I think that seems right. And with that, I think we're finished. All right, so this is my final chapter ranking. Let me do one last look over and see if anything needs rearranged. Best chapter, second best chapter, third best chapter, fourth and fifth. These chapters were all really good. Himawari versus Jura, Jura invading the village, chapter 1 and then chapter 5. Then we've got some good chapters down here that were 2 most recent, as well as chapter 2 and chapter 6. And then chapters that I thought were meh, mid, not the greatest, were ones that really just involved Inoshikacho. No shade to Inoshikacho at all, but in a time like this, I think it was just weird how Jura struggled against them when he's absolutely bullying people like Kawaki and Boruto and Code with no limiters, but still like struggled against a bunch of genin. It was weird to me. Let me put it this way. It felt like their inclusion was forced, like they didn't actually deserve to have the time of day to stand a chance against Jura. Himawari kind of did. That's what these chapters felt like to me, despite the reveal of Kurama and Himawari's true power. It wasn't super exciting to me. That's all I'll say. But nothing was garbage at all. by any means. And maybe I'm being too harsh on these, but honestly, I just needed to have something down here in C tier, and they were my least favorite of the bunch. With all that being said, this is the final ranking. Make sure to smash the like button down below. Let me know what your favorite Two Blue Vortex chapter was in the comments below. I'm super excited to see what you guys have as your favorite or your least favorite. So please let me know. That's about it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out, boys.